morning. This is too tall. Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual freethinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Laura Wink, your worship associate for this morning, and the service today will be led by Reverend A.J. Van Tine. Thank you to everyone on this morning's worship team, including music by Bill Mells and Children's Church for Children 3 and Over by Pat Mells. And Fiona? Okay. And Kaya Mells. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway, and whether it's your first visit or your 1,000th, we are glad that you came. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. We plan on continuing with hybrid worship services so you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube. To help us connect better with our friends watching from home, please turn around and give a wave to the camera. Hi, everybody. At the end of the service, we will invite our friends on Zoom to turn on their cameras and return the wave. We have a few announcements. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, please fill out the card on your chair. We invite you to bring them forward and place them in the basket after Bill rings the chimes and begins to play. You can also come forward to drop a pebble in the water at that time if you have a joy or sorrow that you'd prefer not to share. The fundraising committee is going to have a deep cleaning event this Friday, February 7th, starting at 6 p.m. to spruce up the church for open mic night. Don't forget open mic night on February 8th. Anyone and everyone is invited to join in, bring cleaning supplies, rags, a green cleaning solution, buckets, vacuums, trash bags, and join Karen, me, and Abby for pizza and scrubbing to make everything gleaming bright. Then join us for open mic night on Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. Come to perform or be entertained. We look forward to having you. To sign up for a slot, click the link in the weekly email. Next week is going to be our second Sunday potluck. Next, we are collecting fabric to add squares to the tapestries back here to represent individuals or families of new joiners. If you do not already have a square to symbolize your participation and commitment, please bring 2 fabric options so that we can add you. There's a bag by the front door that you can drop them in. Please keep your selections together and maybe put your name on them so that we know we got everybody. We're hoping to get started on the additions in early March. Are there any other announcements for the good of the community? Karen's coming up. No worries. I bet you it's about the board. I bet you it's about the board meeting.
It is about the board meeting. So Tuesday, we have a monthly board meeting at 7 o'clock. If there's anything that you would like to bring up for discussion, or if you'd like to attend, reach out to me for things to get on the agenda, or I believe the link is in the calendar on the website.
Good morning. Today we're going to have a different hymn at meditation time, and it's in the green hymn notes, 1031. It's written down on the board up there. It's "May I be filled with loving kindness," and we'll sing all 3 verses of that after the meditation words in silence.
Okay. As we prepare to be fully together, I remind us all to silence our phones and devices. We now enter a space of worship. And now is the time to bring forward any joys or sorrows. Do we have a volunteer to help me light the chalice today? Maria? Ooh, both of them. Okay, I think I need to help with this. I invite you to join me in our chalice lighting words as the flame is lit. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope. Good job. Sign of our quest for truth and meaning. In celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. I am Reverend A.J. Van Tyne. I'm the Assistant Minister at First Unitarian Church of Rochester, and it's wonderful to be here with you all in the fourth and final week of our annual pulpit swap. It's been a delight to have Reverend Lane May Reed and Reverend Eileen in our pulpit at First Unitarian, and always wonderful to spend time with for me to get to spend time with our sibling congregations. And it's especially a blessing to be together in these weeks of so much change and distress in our country. It is good to be together. I'd like to open worship with these words adapted from the Reverend Dr. Linda Barnes. Suspended between all that was and all that might be, we struggle to find this very moment, to live this very moment. Let us sit together for a moment, savor this moment. Let us relish this between time where past meets future. Let us harbor a faith that reminds us that right now, right here, is enough. Come, let us worship, and let us rise in voice, body, and spirit for our opening hymn, number 347, Gather the Spirit. As a guest, I'm going to need a little help because I have a story for all ages now. And I'm wondering do I invite the children up or the young at heart up close to hear the story? All right. I would love to, yeah. So you're welcome to come closer to hear the story, or if you can hear from your seats, that's all right as well. The story I have today is Ferdinand the Bull by Munro Leaf. Perhaps you're familiar with it. Well, once upon a time, in the hills of Spain, there lived a little bull named Ferdinand. He was just like all the other bulls in almost every way. He liked to eat grass, he had little horn buds on his head, and he had a mama cow who loved him very much. But there was one way that Ferdinand was different from all of the other bulls. While they loved to play rough and tumble games like fighting and headbutting, Ferdinand just loved to sit under his favorite tree and smell the flowers. Every day Ferdinand sat under that same tree, and every day he was happy there with his own quiet thoughts and the beauty that surrounded him. Ferdinand grew and grew and eventually became one of the biggest young bulls in the herd. One day some men came around looking for a big, tough bull to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. All the other bulls were so excited. They ran around showing off, fighting and headbutting each other to prove how strong they were. Ferdinand heard the commotion from his spot under the tree and looked up to see what was going on. But when he realized it was the men from Madrid looking for a bull to fight in the bullfights, he thought to himself, that's not for me. I'll just stay here under my beautiful tree with my beautiful flowers. But as he sat back down, do you know what happened? He sat right on a bee. Ouch! The bee stung him, and the sting hurt so much that Ferdinand jumped right up and started running around frantically all over the yard, kicking and jumping and butting and snorting and bellowing. When the men from Madrid saw this, they thought that he must be the toughest, meanest bull of all. They decided that he was just the bull that they were looking for, and they took him in a big cart to the bullfight in Madrid. Now, a bullfight is not a very nice thing, and Ferdinand had no idea what to expect. When they opened the gate and let him loose into the arena, Ferdinand took his time coming out. He was nervous about the big crowd cheering and yelling and clapping. It was so loud. He started to back away out of the arena, but then he saw it. In the hands of the lead bullfighter, the matador, he saw a big, beautiful bouquet of flowers. It had been thrown by a woman in the stands. Flowers. How Ferdinand loved flowers. Despite his fears, inspired by the flowers, he charged right out of the gate and towards the matador and his beautiful bouquet. Well, the matador saw a big, strong, fearless bull charging him down, and he got scared. He threw the enormous bouquet up into the air and ran away. And Ferdinand, well, he stopped as soon as he reached the flowers, sat himself down in the dirt, and took a big, deep sniff of the bouquet. Now the matador was mad and embarrassed. He had run away from a bull who wasn't fierce or scary at all. The matador tried everything he could to get Ferdinand to fight, but Ferdinand was not interested in anything except the smell of the beautiful flowers. And eventually, the matador had to give up. Ferdinand had won. His prize was the best thing that he could have hoped for, a quick return home to his home pasture, to sit under his favorite tree, smelling the flowers and enjoying all of the beauty that was around him. The end.
Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of both time and money support our church in its work. Each week, we'd like to spotlight a group or committee and thank them for their gift of time. This week, the group is Buildings and Grounds, and we definitely need more help. People interested in finding out more can contact Brandon, but he's at Ski Patrol most of the winter, so you could contact one of the board members too. 1/4 of our plate collection for the frozen season will go to our service partner, Rochester Area Interfaith Climate Action. RECA is a group of individuals and organizations of faith in the Rochester regional area seeking to create a meaningful response to climate change. In doing so, they acknowledge their common conviction to care for the earth and its people. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or check into the basket or by one of the options on your screen. Please make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering. Now I'd like to share our joys and sorrows. We have one. Drew, congratulations on successful surgery, and thank you for sharing your sister with us today. And now I will drop a stone for these and all the joys and sorrows left in the silence of our hearts. Whatever is in your heart today, we are with you. At this time, if there are any children who would like children's church or nursery care, please go downstairs with Kaya, Carrie, and Pat.
Please join me in the spirit of meditation, reflection, and prayer. I offer this prayer for 8th grade boys and for all within us that is faced with loneliness, rejection, and disconnection. Spirit of the divine masculine, grant us the strength to nurture in ourselves and in every young person we have the privilege to know the gifts of patience, curiosity, and compassion. For you who feel rejected or not enough, for you who feel the unfairness of the world but don't know what to do with it, may your longing for belonging be met with compassion as well as structure. And as you strive for your place in this world, may you always choose the gentler, more cautious, and wiser ways of being. As you explore reactions and test limits, may your edgy jokes be met with firm boundaries, rooted in curiosity rather than shame. As you practice tenderness and vulnerability, may your heartfelt tears be met with warm embraces infused by solidarity rather than ridicule. As you experience the highs and lows of life, may you feel your every emotion fully, naming and making friends with each one. As you gather knowledge and chart your own path, may you be savvy to the lies of charlatans who would tempt you with the easy path of blaming others. As you seek companionship and physical affection, may you respect boundaries and strive for mutually beneficial relationships of trust and safety. As you make friends and build community, may they bear the marks of true belonging. The belonging that doesn't make you cut off parts of your own self to fit in, the belonging that doesn't ask you to blame others, the belonging that doesn't require you to treat others as less than human, the belonging that welcomes all your joy and sorrow and anger and confusion and humor and experiments and mistakes and loves you through it all. With a love that will tell you when your words and actions hurt others. With a love that will heal your own hurt as well. May you grow strong by showing compassion, grow brave by being vulnerable, grow wise by thinking critically, Grow fair by listening deeply. Grow virtuous by accepting boundaries. Grow powerful by seeking truth. Grow resilient by knowing thyself. May you know love, and may you choose gentleness, and may you and may we all flourish into the great potential unfolding before us. Amen, and blessed be. An excerpt from the Diamond Sutra, translated by Red Pine. So you should view this fleeting world. A star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. I'm going to begin with a story about how my colleague at First Unitarian, Reverend Sherry, once inspired me to make a change in my life. Not unusual, perhaps, as ministers go. We're often trying to inspire people to live into their values, to live into their own authenticity. But this wasn't something from a sermon or a deep conversation that we had. It was actually about something very silly or very serious, depending on how you feel about hair. Now, this was coming out of the lockdown years of the early pandemic when there were many deferred haircuts, though I had gotten mine to be a very short haircut when I first moved here in 2021. But a few years after that, eventually Reverend Sherry had found a salon that catered to both Asian hairstyles and to to Asian hair types and queer hairstyles. And very excited about that. They got their hair cut short, much closer to their current do, which you may have seen when they were here a few weeks ago. Now, when I first saw them with this haircut, the very day that they got it, they were clearly glowing and had a stronger energy than I had seen them express in a while. So I was jealous of that. I wasn't jealous of the specific hairstyle, of course. I certainly couldn't pull it off and wouldn't want to try. So maybe jealousy isn't the right word, but I wanted to feel as good as they felt with that haircut. I wanted that feeling of rightness in expressing one's own gender to the world and to oneself, that feeling of gender euphoria. And I realized that after 10 years or so of trying to make a shorter haircut work for me, that I really should re-embrace something closer to the long hair of my youth, which you, of course, see now before you today. And this experience, thinking about what they were experiencing, seeming to be gender euphoria, and seeking that for myself, right? The problem wasn't that I was experiencing the opposite of gender euphoria, which is gender dysphoria, often for people who are trans but assigned a different gender at birth, and being made to feel that how they appear or how they try to appear is different than what they truly feel. There's that disconnect, and that can be very painful. The opposite is for trans folks or for cisgendered folks, when we see ourselves in the gender that we want to present in, and when others affirm that and see that in us, that creates a very good feeling, a euphoria. So thinking about all this, it made me reflect on my own gender, much in the way that Reverend Eileen invited you all to do last week. It led me to questions like, is the fact that I want to have longer hair evidence of a slightly more feminine dimension to my own gender than an otherwise mostly masculine presentation and experience? And the answer that I came to, for me, is no. For me, being a man and appearing the way that I want to happens to mean having long hair. So this is one way I think that gender expansiveness and gender liberation helps people of all genders, not just those historically marginalized. I am not trans, I am not queer, but being able to understand and embrace my own physical appearance and preferred expression as part of my gender, as part of my manliness, frees me from being boxed into society's expectations or assumptions or enforced assignments of how I ought to look and behave if I consider myself a man. Now, because it's winter and I have a one-year-old at home, we've been playing a lot of the album Winterland by the Okie Dokie Brothers, a children's band. And one song in particular has found its way into my mind a lot recently and on this topic. The song is called Snow People, and it's about rolling up people made out of snow, as one does when the weather is like it is right now in our frozen season. But it begins by talking about what snowmen wear and what snow women wear and what you put on them, but it quickly complicates this activity by asking, why do we roll up circles just to put them inside of squares? Why do we decide that this one will be a snowman and must wear a hat and a pipe, and this one is a snow woman and we might put jewelry or a dress on it? Maybe snowmen and snow women aren't words that they actually have to wear. Maybe men and women, boys and girls, aren't words that any of us have to wear. And certainly we don't have to wear a particular interpretation of what those words must mean, even if we do want to wear one of those words. So I've learned that my gender expression, what is manly for me, or what brings gender euphoria for me, may not be the same as it is for other men. In fact, it definitely isn't. In these last few weeks, and I'm sure this won't be the end of it, those coming into power in our federal government have displayed and laid bare toxic and misogynistic versions of masculinity that I cannot abide and do not see in my own sense of masculinity. But it's not only that my own sense of masculinity may be different from others, as it was for Ferdinand the Bull. It's also the case that the same thing that brings me euphoria might bring the euphoria of a different gender to a person of a different gender. Again, with the example of long hair. Long hair on a woman might help her feel gender euphoria as a woman. It turns out short hair nor long hair, neither of those is the essence of being a man or a woman. Neither is facial hair nor dressing a certain way, nor being physically strong nor assertive or nurturing. In fact, for the life of me, I can't find any kind of essential or exclusive characteristic of masculinity. Certainly, I can make a descriptive generalization about the ways that most masculine or most feminine people in a particular society present, but we know that those vary across cultures and over time. And for every general trend in a single society, there are always going to be counterexamples. And I want to be clear as well, the question of traits, of qualities of gender gets much more complicated than talking simply about clothing choice or appearance. But it's also much more important because, quite frankly, there's no moral value in whether I wear my hair short or long. But there is an ethical dimension to whether I treat people with kindness, compassion, dignity, etc. And so, in the quest of undoing toxic masculinity, as I feel I am called to as someone who is a man and identifies that way, and also as a progressive who is committed to the liberation of everyone, including myself, but in this quest to undo toxic masculinity that I may have otherwise absorbed from culture growing up, I've tried describing what the traits of a positive masculinity would be instead. And in talking with other progressive, committed men about this, many of us come to the conclusion that anything we name as part of healthy masculinity, well, those are actually just healthy, ethical things that everyone should be doing. Turns out, part of what's toxic in toxic masculinity is the idea of there being one right way to be a man in the first place. So, as far as I can reckon, there doesn't seem to be any essence or fixed meaning to what it means to be a man. And deconstructing my own gender in this way has helped me to grasp what Buddhists describe as emptiness, or sunyata in Sanskrit. This idea is part of what the Diamond Sutra was getting at in describing the effervescent, temporary, conditional, contextual nature of all things. Sri Lankan Buddhist scholar David Kalupahana puts it, all experienced phenomena are empty. This does not mean that they are not experienced and therefore non-existent, only that they are devoid of a permanent and eternal substance because, like a dream, they are mere projections of human consciousness. So everything is relative in a cosmological sense. Everything that exists depends on other people and things to exist. They depend on our own perception when we experience them. Nothing is concrete, fixed, unchanging, or permanent. All things are empty of such qualities of permanence and independence. So when talking about the emptiness of masculinity, I'm not saying that there is no reality to masculinity, or that masculinity is some kind of lie that I must free myself from. I do feel that I am a man. I do enjoy being seen as a man, and there are things that make me feel more or less manly. But I cannot fully or finally describe them, and even if I could, I would not say, and all other men must go and do likewise. Like Ferdinand the Bull, he expresses a different way of being a bull, but he is always gendered as male. He was always described as a bull. None of his difference in how he understands himself to be means that he's any less masculine as Ferdinand the Bull. Wendy Shinyo Haylett, American Buddhist and author, writes in Everyday Buddhism, despite the seeming emptiness of calling everything empty, it's exactly the opposite. It's full of possibility. It doesn't mean nothing exists. It means nothing exists as you thought it did. But it could equally exist as something else, far better. Embracing the emptiness of something like masculinity, for me at least, helps me to expand it and to be in touch with my own authenticity, rather than what predefined costume somebody else has laid out for me to wear. So my hope in connecting these two concepts of gender and emptiness is twofold. One, that the Buddhist concept of emptiness can help us view gender more truthfully and expansively. And secondly, that through deconstructing gender, we might better be able to understand emptiness as a truth that is true in all arenas of life and reality, at least in a Buddhist perspective. So let's look now at some of the examples of that quest for a healthier masculinity as opposed to the more socially prevalent toxic masculinity. There's a new trend that I'm very excited about for high school boys called a Healthy Masculinity Club. Featured in a recent CNN article, Brian Fain, a club advisor in Cleveland, said that the goal was to create a place where young men could form authentic connections, be honest, and drop the mask that men and young men often feel obligated to wear. Conversations in the club might focus on distinguishing consent from coercion, how the media reinforces gender norms, or how to be an ally and support women by fighting against misogyny. Sophomore Ephraim Goodness, 15, said he is less likely to speak or act without thinking about how his words or actions might impact somebody else. Senior class president Owen King, 17, added that he now understands the importance of calling out other boys and men for misogyny and toxic behaviors. So again, as a man, as a progressive man, I feel that these are very important conversations for boys and men to be having, important tasks for us to take up, given the realities of patriarchy and sexism in our society. But that's just it. It has to do with those realities. Ultimately, the answers of how to be a good man in society isn't that different from being a good woman or a good person. They're about authenticity, vulnerability, compassion. Qualities that everyone is capable of and ought to develop. If the conditions of our society and prevailing gender norms were different, such a club might have a different curriculum. But thinking about how our actions might affect others, of course everyone should be doing that. Knowing the difference between consent and coercion, that may be one that, given the way that men are socialized, we need to be more attentive to that conversation, but certainly everyone should be thoughtful about consent. Another example comes from Men's Health magazine and an article entitled "The Case for Group Texting with Your Bros About Fertility." In it, American writer Eric Smith reflects on how he overcame feeling that no one would want to hear about his struggles with fertility, his family's struggle with fertilities, but he overcame those feelings and shared his experiences with his guy friends, and found out that others had similar experiences, and even those that didn't want it to be a support to him. So now he's developed, with some of those friends and others they found who have similar fertility struggles, a support group, that texts each other regularly. Now, there's not some secret for how to do a support text group for men specifically in masculine ways. The story is in Men's Health magazine because men are socialized to think that they don't need or shouldn't seek out such community. And it may be true that men are not as readily skilled or practiced in these qualities of seeking and providing support to one another, again, because of how they are socialized, because of how the patriarchy and toxic masculinity exist in our society. But the solution to that situation isn't that there's some essential, special way that men support one another that's very different from how women do it. Rather, it's based on what that group needs. What the solution is based on the skills and experiences and problems and relationships of, the people in that group specifically. While there may be some things that are going to be in common between any support group for men in our particular culture, each group like this will inevitably have its own personality and uniqueness and traits, as does each person. And allowing such a group to understand itself to be a group for men and focusing on that, but also not boxed into, that means we have to do it a certain way, is going to allow them to support each other much better than if they were boxed in. Each support group for men's fertility, each high school club for healthy masculinity, each of these are devoid of a permanent and eternal substance. And when we try to behave as if there is or force that on them, they don't operate as well. And besides that, each of these being devoid of a permanent and eternal substance, What these groups are really about, in my view, is that they're trying to practice things that people of all genders should be pursuing. Part of what informs a healthy masculinity is the same thing that informs the shorter-term struggles of feminism or any other freedom struggle. That is, the parameters of the oppression itself. In this case, the specifics of how gender stereotypes and gender roles are presented and enforced. Part of learning healthy masculinity is learning to be vulnerable, for instance. Not because men inherently need to learn this lesson more than women or others, but because the current and historical cultural conditions have promoted the idea that vulnerability is a feminine trait and not something that men should experience or express. And this idea has been a detriment to men's own maturity and self-knowledge. Again, to say that masculinity is empty is not to say that it is worthless as a concept or that it is meaningless or not real, but it is to say that masculinity and gender are, like all things, actually much, much more, and at the same time, maybe much less, than any of our feeble attempts to define them. We go astray when we try to limit somebody's experiences or expressions of gender, especially or including when we do that to ourselves. Instead, by seeing the emptiness of something like masculinity, I, as a man, can be freed to become the best, most authentic, healthiest version of myself. As the 3rd century Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna wrote, all is possible when emptiness is possible. Nothing is possible when emptiness is impossible. Or put in more modern terms, although he was not specifically drawing upon Buddhism, but as the Healthy Masculinity Club advisor in Cleveland, Brian Fain, said it, instead of masculinity being a static frame of mind, it's more of a constant state of reflection on how you move in the world and how it impacts other people, especially those that you're closest with. There are an infinite number of ways to show up as a man in the world. May we all be blessed to experience such possibility and infinitude, and bless others by taking up the task of making that a reality for everyone we meet. May it be so. Thank you. May all things be possible. May we know and express our own authentic gender and support others in doing the same, holding all at once both reverence and humility for the emptiness of it all. Like a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Please join now in our closing hymn, number 1007, There's a River Flowing in My Soul.
If you're with us today on Zoom and would like to wave goodbye at the end of the service, you can turn on your cameras now. Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Hello, Zoomers.